and welcome back to the workbench. In today's video, I'm going to be doing kind of a compare and contrast video against firearms that are what some would consider full size. And what I mean by full size is 15 round capacity or greater. So you'll see a few firearms in here that are considered compact, but they have a 15 round capacity. So it's kind of apples to apples, kind of apples to oranges, as I'm sure many of you will comment, but it's kind of a compare and contrast for these types of firearms. So before we get started, I'll show, of course, everything is completely unloaded here. Nothing in the magazines, nothing in the chambers, and of course, nothing present on the workbench. I have 4 15-round firearms and 2 17-round firearms. So let's get started with the biggest one here on the bench, and that is the Beretta 92. This is the longest gun. This is the tallest gun. This is the heaviest gun here. This has a 15-round capacity. It has a double single-action trigger, and the Beretta 92 FS, as this is, has a manual safety located on the slide, which also acts as a decocker. The next firearm we have here on the bench is the Ruger SR9. This is 17 round capacity. It has ambidextrous features such as the safety, manual frame safety, as well as the magazine release, ambidextrous. The next firearm we have here on the bench is the Smith & Wesson M&P 9. This has a 17 round capacity, and there really isn't anything too unique about this other than it's my competition pistol, so I've upgraded the trigger. Next, we have the Cig P229. This has a 15 round capacity, and it is also a double single action pistol. Next to it, we have its striker fired cousin, the Cig P320. This is the compact model, so it actually holds 15 rounds. And it's got a nice double action only striker fired trigger. And lastly, we have the Glock 19 Gen 3 15 round capacity, and it has the standard Glock safe action trigger. So let's compare and contrast first and foremost the 15 round capacity firearms. So let's get the 17 rounders kind of out of the way here. So you'll notice there are 4 15 rounders. The Beretta 92 is a 15 round firearm. I think it's under capacity. I think for its size, if I overlaid an M&P 9 onto it, you can still see the Beretta. It's just a big stinking gun. M&P 9, 17 round capacity, Beretta 92, 15 round capacity. Some might say, well, it has more to do with the grip than anything else. Well, they're the same size. So I think for concealment purposes, you'd probably never choose something like this. But for full size, which is kind of what we're talking about here today, this actually might be a viable option for you. If this is just going to be a nightstand gun, it's just going to sit in a drawer, and in case somebody breaks into your house in the middle of the night, this gun is not a bad gun at all to use. It's got the longest barrel out of all of them here, which kind of contributes to the overall length of the gun. 4.93 inches. It's going to be more accurate than a 3-inch barrel, just inherently. It's going to be. It's got some interesting features to it. If we look at the other 15 round capacity firearms, we've got the Cig 229, we've got the Cig P320 compact, and we've got the Glock 19. If I line up the bottom of the grips, you'll notice that the Glock is just slightly shorter, but it's a grip angle thing. If I line up the trigger guards and everything, they're relatively the same size. This gun, however, is really, really light. If I reference my sheets here that I actually have in the video description below, which are the spec sheets, if I move to the Cig P320, I'll notice that the weight on there is 22.87 ounces completely unloaded without the magazine. The Glock 19 is actually 21.1, so it's not that much lighter, but it is a lighter gun. Both really good options. So let's look at the difference between the P320 and the P229. Striker fired, hammer fired. Some might say, well, this one seems to have more safety. So, well, they both have about the same amount of safety. In fact, this 229 is probably a safer gun to carry than the 320, just because of its inherent design and the fact that it's been perfected over the years. Again, 15 round capacity. If I set them next to each other, they appear almost identical. There is a little bit of difference in the width on the 229 that you'll notice. It's got kind of this hump over here, and you might think that that would be uncomfortable, but in fact it's quite the opposite. It makes this gun a more comfortable gun to hold, in my opinion. Whatever they did to this, the way they contoured the grip, just feels good. And I don't mean the stippling, I mean the contour. It's got kind of, oh well, this is going to come across on video, but it's almost got kind of waves in it for your fingers, almost finger grooves, if you will, but on the sides instead of the front strap. And the 320 doesn't have that. It's just kind of a black plastic thing that you hold on to. I like the 229 better. I just think it feels better in the hand. But again, really, you can't go wrong with either one of these. Significantly more expensive, though, on the 229, I will say that. So, again, here are your 15-round firearm choices. You've got the Glock 19, Cig 229, Cig P320, and the Beretta 92 FS. So let's move on now to 17-round firearms. Alright, so we've got the 15-rounders set aside. Let's bring in the 17-rounders. We have our Smith & Wesson M&P 9 and our Ruger SR9, full size. Nearly identical. These guns are almost mirror images of one another. They just look very similar. They function very similar. The Ruger is a bit thinner, even with the small palm swell on the MP. The Ruger is just a little bit thinner overall. And if I reference my sheets again, I will take a look at the weights here. Weight of the unloaded Ruger SR9, 22.85 ounces. Weight of the unloaded M&P 9 comes in at 24.45 ounces. So the Ruger is a little bit lighter as well. Both have 17-round capacity. Both use Metgar magazines, which in appearance seem to be almost interchangeable. So let's try to take the Ruger magazine and put it in the Smith & Wesson. Only goes so far. So now let's see if I can get the M&P magazine, which is this one here, to fit into the Ruger. And I can, but again, notice that angle. So the grip angle is more severe on the Ruger and more straight up and down on the Smith & Wesson. To show you how similar these magazines are, just from a distance, it's so tough to tell. But as I get closer, you can see the Ruger emblem versus the Smith & Wesson emblem. Also, this says SR9 right on it, so it's not going to be difficult to tell your Ruger magazines apart from your Smith & Wesson magazines. 17-round capacity. Now again, this trigger's been upgraded, so I can't do an apples-to-apples comparison, but I can tell you when I had the stock trigger in here, the trigger pull weight was right around 6 pounds, so I would give the edge to the SR9 here, because this is 5¼ pounds as measured on my gauge here. So now that we've got these 17 rounders out, let's bring in the Beretta. Again, I showed you the comparison earlier from a size standpoint, so if I just rest the firearms here up against this piece of 2x4, you'll be able to see just what I'm talking about. So it is longer, the Beretta is, than the other two. In fact, I think the Smith & Wesson might be the shortest overall. But it's got a 4¼ inch barrel, 4.93 inch barrel here, and a 3.99 inch barrel. So it's actually got the shortest barrel on the Ruger. But I think that has more to do with the grip angle on it. So if you're considering a full-size firearm for home defense or for personal defense, or if it's going to be a first gun and you just want something comfortable, then, I mean, really, none of these options here are bad. I know that the Glock 19 is the best-selling Glock in the United States. I wouldn't be surprised if it were the best-selling handgun in the United States. You've got your Sigs, the P320, the striker-fired, and the P229, which is the hammer-fired. Both great guns. All three of these are 15 rounds. If you want to step up to something a little bigger, you could, of course, go with the SR9, the M&P 9, or the Beretta 92. If you're looking for a gun that is good all around, don't rule out a full-size firearm. Yes, some of these might be classified as compact, but a full-size firearm that holds 15 or 17 rounds can be concealed, so keep that in mind. Comparison-wise, you really can't go wrong with anything here on the workbench today. I mean, all of these companies, all these manufacturers make quality products. Glock, Smith & Wesson, Ruger, Sig, Beretta, they all do a fantastic job. They've been around for years. Their warranty services are really good, so I wouldn't hesitate suggesting any of these to anybody. Alright, so you've seen all these guns on the bench. You've seen me talk about them and handle them and kind of hold them up against each other, but you probably want to see me shoot them, right? So, I actually, when I was out of the range, testing all these firearms for their individual reviews, I was able to do so at the same time so I could shoot them back to back to back and get a feel for just how each of them operates, if there were quirks that I noticed after shooting one of its competitors or something like that. I was able to see that out there, and I will say that all of these guns were a blast to shoot. Thank you very much to those of you who let me borrow firearms to test them and to review them here for you, the YouTubers. With that, I will say thank you all very much for watching. I'll talk to you again very soon.